Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first meeting of 2023 for the Carvel community. Today's date is January 11th, 2023. If you're watching this from home, we encourage you to come join us live. We meet every second and fourth Wednesday of the month at 8 a.m. Pacific time. It's a great way for you to come and listen in on what the maintainers are working on, meet other members of the community, bring up anything you wish to discuss about any of the Carvel tools. If you're having trouble getting started, or if you have any feature requests, anything like that, you can bring that up with the team in this meeting, or you can just simply listen in and participate however you wish, but we would love for you to join us live. For those on the call today, if you do have a discussion topic you wish to bring up today, please be sure to add that to the discussion topic section here on the agenda, and we will get to it towards the end of the meeting. If you aren't able to join us for any of these meetings, but you still want to get a hold of us, there's a few ways you can do that. We're in the Carvel channel in the Kubernetes Slack workspace. You can email us. You can find us in GitHub and any of our project repos, and you can find us on Twitter at Carvel_dev. If at any point you are interacting with us or any other members of the community, we ask that you please read and abide by our code of conduct, which is here and throughout all of our repos. For those that use Carvel tools, we would love to know more details about how you're using our tools. So we've created this pinned issue here in which you can simply add a comment to and add details about how you're using the Carvel tools and information about yourself in the organization that you work for that is using the Carvel tools, and optionally add the logo for that organization, and we would get it added to the adopters file. So this is just a way for us to know more about how folks are using the tools. It helps us plan better for development and just really get a good insight into the use cases for the tools. And for adding your logo to the adopters file, we can also promote your company and show that you're using Carvel as well. And for those that are in the meeting today, please add your name here in the attendees list and in the organization that you represent. It helps us keep track of just everyone that's attending the meeting, but it is optional if you don't feel comfortable doing so. On to announcements. So, we're still working on onboarding into CNCF as a sandbox project. For the most part, we've got pretty much everything done, except for the big thing is migrating all of the repos into the new organization to Carvel Dev. And as a reminder, what we mentioned in the last meeting before we went on break was the migration will have an impact on any projects that are using the Carvel tool directly via Go libraries. So we put a little blurb in here just to keep that everybody aware of that. And once we have done all of this, we'll make sure to post in the Kubernetes Slack channel as an early warning. So just something to keep in mind. And as we get all this taken care of, we hope to get it all done by the end of the month, but we will see based on any blockers we come across, et cetera, et cetera. So any questions about that? Okay, moving on to content. So since the last meeting on January 5th, we had this super cool webinar video, kind of an interview, demo, all sorts of stuff. It's called Enlightening. It's a VMware show. And Lee Capelli was so awesome enough to do that. It was a really fun demo and all that. So I encourage you to go watch that. He goes over all the Carvel tools in length, and Whitney, who is the host, she does notes the same time. So It's really cool. If you are new to the Carvel tools, it's a really cool video to watch if you're wanting to brush up on some of your knowledge or learn more about any of the other tools. It's a good way to get that information. So, and upcoming, something that I just posted that I think would be a good project for me to take on is helping those outside of VMware and even people who work at VMware who aren't familiar or aren't working on Carvel, learn how to become a contributor and what that path to maintainership might look like. So, as we start the new year and, we're working on all sorts of stuff. We would love to have more people contributing and helping us build this project up. And if you're interested in contributing and becoming a maintainer and really, putting those skills and your experience to work there, we would love to have you. And so I know it can be a bit complex with all of the tools. So I'm hoping to work with maintainers and everybody that is familiar with Carvel to make it less complex and easier to onboard into this pathway. So stay tuned for that. I hope to get it out by the end of the month. And for those that do have other stuff they want to share for Carvel, we did create this sign up sheet of sorts for you to add your name and what topic you wish to discuss about your use of Carvel, if it's in, integrating Carvel with other tools, and like how they work together, any sort of interesting thing you wish to share with the community. We would love for you to do that. Just put your name, topic, and then type of medium. If you're writing a blog, if you're doing a video, if you're speaking at a conference, anything like that, we would love to promote you and make sure everyone in the community is aware of that. Okay, looks like we didn't have any releases since the last meeting, which is understandable since we had a break. And then moving on to status updates. Project roadmap, I doubt this has been updated.
Yeah, Rainu and I probably need to sit down and update the roadmap, since you can see it hasn't been updated since October. So I can take a note to do that. Be confident we are staying busy, as you'll see from the things that we have going on. But yes, if you do have any thoughts, ways you want to influence our roadmap, as always, please do reach out to us and let us know what would be most helpful for you.
Great, thanks, Aaron. Okay, moving on to the various backlog pieces, what the team's working on. I have Cap up first, who's able to talk more about that.
I'll do that. So I'm really sorry if there's some overlap here, because I totally do not remember what was said during the last meeting. But this is just a list of things we are working on this week. So so the first one is actually an issue we ran into towards the end of last year. So what happens is whenever Cap does a deploy, it sort of leaves a config map behind saying that, oh, these are the changes that were made. And we sort of limit that to 200 config maps. And I believe kapp-controller overrides that limit and sets it to an even lower limit. While deleting, when a delete starts, Cap does leave behind a config map like that, but we did not bother setting a max limit on it, because when a delete exits successfully, we garbage collect everything. So what happened was we ran into a scenario where a user had a package installed on the cluster, which was stuck in a failing delete state. And it had been in that state for a while, and it actually sort of populated the cluster with a lot of config maps. So that's something we plan on fixing up, just to restrict the maximum number of config maps that's left behind. So reducing unnecessary list calls. So this is something Tanushri has been working on. It's before cap does the diff, it generally lists everything on the cluster and it does two calls. One to list everything and see if that resource exists on the cluster but is not owned by cap. It also does a call with cap's label, like it checks if there are any resources with the cap app label on the cluster, but it's sort of not needed for a new app. So it's like a slight enhancement to how many calls you're making. The rejects matching is something we've been working on. We plan on closing it out soon. We have often seen use, so let's say you're defining a template rule or a rebase rule. I think rebase rule is where the use case was for cap, which says how you treat different fields in the config. We allowed users to like supply a path, which is basically like an array of strings. But what folks said is that they might want to check that do something like copy all the annotations which have this prefix. So to sort of enable use cases like that, we are working on allowing users to do like a regex match of sorts. So that's what that's about. The fourth point, we had a user who's been working with us for a while to sort of have cap be friendlier towards customized generated secrets. And they've been making some changes to how the code is organized to make that easier. And so we plan on working with Christoph and driving that through. And the last one is also something that we have been working on for a while, and we just want to close it off now. So when cap does a diff, what it used to do so far is it used to copy over the diff from the existing resource on the cluster. However, there's this one pretty not so usual case that over different versions of a CRD, how the status is structured might change. And what was happening is when cap was trying to apply an older version of the status, it was erroring out. So we're working towards completely ignoring status while doing diffs, because that's not something a user would want to change in the first place. So yep, I think that's it for cap.
Thank you, Sumik, for going all of that. That's really interesting, exciting stuff to be working on. Any questions before we move on? Okay, and then going on to cake control.
Yep. So not a lot of new stuff going on in cake control right now, but this is something like, this is actually something Thomas had pointed out, I think a couple of weeks ago. And we are planning on sort of discussing this probably on the issue itself. So I think Thomas raised two issues. One was regarding how cake control should be creating namespaces if it doesn't exist. And the other one was about having cake control be like the first choice when it comes to installing kapp-controller. And I think, yeah, so this discussion point here mainly is that initially when we started off, we were trying to sort of keep cake control scope to just translating what kapp-controller resources on the cluster are trying to say, custom resources are trying to say. However, what Thomas, I think, was trying to say is that if a user is starting off, they should probably start off by installing cake control rather than doing something like a cap deploy, because the user shouldn't have to know about cap just to get up and running with kapp-controller. And I think that makes sense. And something similar with the create namespace flag as well, that the initial thought process was that that's something a user can do with a kubectl command. But do we want to allow the user to provide a flag which sort of lets them say, okay, if this does not exist, just create it for me now. And I think that initially we used to install in all namespaces. Now we have the sort of constraint that we do not allow installation in public namespaces. So it does make sense to sort of tell the users that, okay, if your namespace is not created already, right now what we do is if they run into the case where someone's trying to install in a public namespace, we tell them that you either change where the kube config is looking or you create the namespace. But it does make sense to just be like, specify a namespace and use this flag. We'll make sure it's created. So yeah, I guess those are the two sides. We were just hoping to iron it out on the issue itself. the create namespace one being the most straightforward one. Whereas I guess there's some thought process, some thought needs to go into the cases involved when we are installing kapp-controller through k-control, I guess. Thomas, do you want to add something to that?
No, yeah, you covered the two ideas and that sounds great. I'm happy to join the discussion, and if I can contribute in any way, please let me know. I'll be happy to.
I had a quick question. Will we be talking about this during our discussion period? Is that the plan? Is that what that item is to go over this more in depth?
We totally can. I was actually hoping to do it on the issue. I haven't thought about it a lot, to be completely honest, but yeah.
Okay, cool. Then let me just ask a question then. So in terms of creating the namespace, are we talking about the namespace in which the kapp config maps would be housed? Or are we talking about namespaces that are implied through resources that are being deployed?
So the namespace where the kapp config map stays, actually. This conversation is in context of package installs. So let's say you're doing a package install in a particular namespace and it doesn't exist. So a flag which just says created for me. So yes, the kapp config map will also reside in that particular namespace.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, Thomas.
Yeah, pasted the links to the two issues in the chat.
Someone already had my idea, is adding it there. Thank you. Okay, any further discussion there? Okay. Thank you, Thomas, for contributing this idea, and Sumek for taking this on. Looking forward to see what comes out of that. All right, moving on to image package.
Yeah, I just threw this one up here. I didn't have anything to do with it, but just drawing some attention to Joao, who's not here, and Alex Barbada. So Alex actually submitted the issue and a PR as a way to resolve this. So the issue being, as you can see here, if you run the image package list command, you can get a very large response of tags. And many of these tags are these ones that are suffixed that end in the .image package. So they're not often that helpful. It's for humans to read. So when they return on a CLI, it's generally not helpful. So Alex did submit a PR that was merged. And I'm sure we'll talk about this some more once we actually cut the image package release, but just wanted to give a shout out to Alex. Thank you for the contribution.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Alex, and thanks, Aaron, for bringing this to our attention. Okay. Anything else to add to status updates before we move on to discussion topics? Okay. All right. So making kapp friendlier towards custom resources with stable APIs from other projects. Who put this in here? Anyone?
Oh, I'm sorry. Are we on the discussion topics?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's me.
Okay, take it away.
Yeah. So I was unsure whether this should be in the backlog section or the discussion topic section, but I'll just sort of go over it. Recently, so to give some context, so let's say you're using a version secret the deployment and deploying them using kapp. The expectation is that the versioning affects the deployment right out of the box. However, let's say you're using a knative custom resource, which was the issue that came up, and it's referencing a version secret. The user is expected to add certain rules in the kapp config so that that's enabled. So so the user, when we did share across, so the guideline when discussions like these popped up initially was that you can sort of publish a cap config with your set of rules and ask your users to use those rules while deploying using cap, let's say, or putting it in the kapp-controller package. So this user did point out that since Knative has like stable APIs now, it would probably make sense to have cap support Knative out of the box. And like we were also thinking about that we should in fact start integrating with tools which sort of a lot of our users use and are familiar with. So yeah, that's it really. So any thoughts around what the barrier should be or how we should go about these?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think if there are the fact that a resource is defined in a CRD and not by the project itself doesn't make it any less valuable, especially if they're just really pervasive, then they're effectively that way. I think we'd want to be careful to like invest in what are obviously stable APIs. So like Ingress comes to mind in terms of something that's still somewhat, Ingress implementers are trying to figure out how to get the right level of functionality into their resources. So that's an example of a resource that we'd kind of want to wait for the dust to settle there. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a litany of things that people use pretty typically. Looking at UCert Manager, like that kind of stuff is probably pretty common. Yeah, I don't know how we would go about doing that, but I love this idea of making the right thing easy.
Thank you, Sumik and John, for that. Any other comments or questions for this?
I'm sorry, I was really listening, but I missed the part. Is there an issue that we captured this idea in yet? Is there a GitHub issue for this?
Yeah, there's not one yet. I think we can just ask the user to create an issue so that we can discuss it there with the user. Right? I think that makes sense.
Cool. Nice. Praveen's on it. Bias to action. Love it.
Oh, so Praveen's creating one right now.
It's
Never
right
mind.
now. Probably going to replace your text with his link.
Burp. Burp.
Derp.
Burp, burp. Praveen creating issue
There
during
you go.
meeting. Will add link soon. Okay. Anything else on this topic? Nope. Okay. Moving on to the next one, integration of YTT as a flux controller. First off, hi. How I'm gonna mispronounce your name, but I'm gonna try Guillermo.
Yes, that's great. Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Paul. Yes.
Hi, welcome. So glad to have you.
Thank you.
I don't believe
Thank
we've
you. This
interacted
is my
before.
first time joining. Not yet. No, I was active in the Cloud Foundry community, and I'm very happy to be using the Carvel tools as part of another project. Yeah, maybe I can introduce myself, maybe really short, so that you can understand what I'm working on.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So I'm working on a project within Orange. Orange is a telco company, and we are working on Kubernetes-based managed services, such as databases. And as part of this, I'm using Crossplane, the Crossplane project to provide Kubernetes-facing user experience for managed services. And one challenge that I had is that Crossplane has very complex custom resources to offer, and I was lacking completion and coding assistance, basically coding assistance for those cross-plane composition custom resources. So that was my first need. We're currently using mostly Flux, Flux with Customize to manage our managed services infrastructure. But I was really bumping into this issue of getting coding assistance to get those custom resources configured. And so I found Carvel and YTT very useful for me to split a large composition custom resources into much smaller parts. And in particular, these smaller parts are custom resources in themselves. So let's take the example of maybe an RDS database, a composition custom resources compose, as it says, multiple individual custom resources, one of them being an RDS database, for example, an AWS RDS database. And I do want to get completion to get this RDS database offered. So I use Carvel to split these large files into multiple small ones, onto which in my IDE I do get proper completion. So yes, that's my first use case, and I've been very happy with YTT and kapp-controller for this. And with a learning curve, of course, which was one of the deal breaker for my team because of YTT imperative syntax. The learning curve was too high for most of my team, so we agreed that I'm encapsulating most of YTT into libraries, into star libraries, so that the rest of the team could eventually use the same paradigm, but not be exposed to YTT complexity. I continued using YTT and kapp for running acceptance tests using Kurtle because we don't have a CI. We're only using CD. So I had the trouble of how to run the Kurtle. I don't know if you know about Kurtle. So like Kurtle is a declarative tool for Kubernetes, and you need to provide declarative YAML files to deploy Kubernetes resources as well as assets. And so I've been using with the support for immutable configurations. I've been using YTT to deploy the Kurtle YAML files as within config maps, and to mount those config maps into a cron job, and to schedule to cron job and job, and to schedule the job automatically whenever a test file change. The config map is versioned, and so a new job is launched automatically. So basically, my test, whenever I modify in Git one of my test file, a new job is triggered and launch my test. So this has been really useful for me. This way of thinking that automated tests can run within the cluster, close to the actual system under test, actual composition. So it's been, yeah, I'm still learning. I'm still new to Carvel tools, but it's been really a nice journey for now. And I searched in the issues and in Slack, and I didn't see yet mention of Flux users that would use Carvel. And I have the intuition that there is quite a bit of opportunities there to expand use of Carvel beyond the Carvel community. The Flux team has similar aspect to Carvel in terms of Git sources, which kind of duplicated in similar to the fetch aspect in the kapp-controller aspect. So it looks like the sources are really similar to Flux sources as a fetch part, and the template seems that it could be really fitting well a Flux controller that would do YTT templating. just like the Flux Helm chart or the Flux customized controller is doing customized templating. And so I'm wondering whether there was any thoughts or similar discussion yet in the past relating to this. And I felt maybe it was easier to discuss in the community meeting rather than issues or Slack. So sorry for long introduction.
No, that was all useful context. I know that this has come up in the past, and I don't think there isn't any reason why it wouldn't be a good idea for all of what you're saying. I mean, effectively customizes a kind of overlay on your configuration. So it fits logically. I don't also remember, and you're probably, yeah, I don't think that ever crystallized into some kind of issue that we tracked in order to be able to prioritize and plan on. And that has more to do, from my perspective, I'd be happy to be corrected by anybody on the call, but from what I remember, it just has more to do with what we've been able to focus on rather than if the idea has any merit at all. I think it does. And in fact, in general, part of our journey into CNCF is finding ways to play well with others more so. So this actually fits in that intention well. So I haven't seen any progress beyond conversation at this point with something like that. Yeah, but so I think the idea has a lot of merit personally. Would love to see that because I know that a lot of folks are using Flux already, and they would just like to be able to have their templating and overlaying be able to participate seamlessly in that, not to have some kludge off the side to sort of fit that in.
And I wonder whether also it might benefit to the Carvel community to leverage the modular Flux approach of adding in the additional input sources and maybe as well notifications. So to I see, for example, I'm not sure yet if kapp-controller supports buckets or OCI images as inputs, for example, which Flux does. And so maybe there'd be one way to expand the use cases of Carvel by leveraging the building blocks that the Flux community is contributing as well.
Yeah, and regardless, it speaks to our Unix philosophy roots of being composable. So yes, while the fetching, we do have fetchers for OCI repos, but we don't have for S3 buckets. So yeah, but again, kind of coming back to wanting to be composable. That sounds great. I haven't thought a lot deeper about this personally, but I wonder if there isn't a simple path here from having a kapp-controller that effectively meets the API for a Flux controller for a that can just be plugged in that way. But
yeah, definitely, that would be awesome. Yeah.
Shoot from the hip here, but love this idea.
Yeah, I haven't digged so much into a Flux controller to have an idea whether that's compatible and how the artifacts from the source controller are obtained and the communication, the events between controller, or how all of this fits. But yeah, that'd be idea if the same component could have two personalities. That would be awesome. Thank you very much. I really appreciate this conversation. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for bringing this up. This is really valuable. We're also looking at informally around ways that we can plug into the Argo experience as well. So this is very relevant, even if you don't hear us talking a lot about it. Part of that just has to do with we're trying to be responsible by staying focused on what we've committed to up to this point. But yeah, I would love to talk further about it. I don't know, I've been hogging the mic. Anybody else have thoughts about this? Cool. So maybe part of the next step would be to, again, create a space to have a conversation about this. If you wanted to create an issue
Yep.
in kapp-controller, I think that'd be a good spot.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
with pleasure. I
And
can do
then,
that.
yeah, we'll add some context, flesh it out, and give us an opportunity to kind of kick this forward, even if in increments.
Okay. Maybe I have a second question if we still have a bit of time. I'm not sure. Yeah. Is the Carvel community, does the Carvel community has experience into the kind of CI CI tasks I was mentioning, like running tests along with deployments? Other members are doing that, and is there ways I could get inspiration from their work?
Yeah, I personally haven't seen a lot of folks talking about that. It's something, yeah. So there isn't a hidden corner that you haven't found yet of conversation that's happening there, as far as I know. Wonder if anyone else on the call has seen something like that.
I might talk to Lee to see if he's seen any of that. He'd be a good resource. So Lee Capilli, he's a dev advocate here at VMware, but he's heavily involved in Carvel. So I'll reach out to him to see if he has any experience with that.
Lee Carvel.
Yeah, Lee Capelli.
Lee Capelli. Okay. Yeah. And specifically one trouble that that I'm currently having is that I'm using the data module to push my YAML test files into config maps, and I would like to find a way as those data files could be YTT templates while being not individual files. Currently, I'm using this as a folder, and I iterate over those data files, and I push them as a config map. And like to do the same thing, but to use YTT syntax within them. I haven't found a way to do that yet. Is there a way, an outcome to do that that I would have missed?
So let's see if I understand. Are you talking about wanting to have a template that generates multiple files?
Oh, maybe I can share my screen.
Cool.
So maybe that's a video. Can I do that here? Sharing screen. I have a series of tasks here, for example, that are just plain text, and I would like to make those being YTT templates. And for now, the way that I'm getting them is I'm using a config map, and oh, maybe I can stop my camera. That's maybe too much. Sorry. Oh, not sure you can still hear me. Oh, maybe that's too much for my connection. Yeah. Oh, shoot. Oh, yeah.
I see. So you want each of these files in the cuddle files to possibly be a template? Is that what you're
Yes.
hoping for
Yes,
here?
correct.
I see.
Yes.
I see. Okay. And okay. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is we have an outstanding idea that we've been kicking around about being able to emit comments out of YTT templates, which since our templating is in the commenting space, you can get at like one level of indirection where you can describe what the template would look like in comments. That could be an approach. It's kind of limited because that could get hairy pretty fast depending on how complicated your templates are. But it's an interesting use case to dig into in order to maybe give a little bit more shape to that effort. But out of the box, if this file, since this file goes through, or are you saying you want to execute the templating as you place these files in here?
Yes, I would like, because
I
I do have
see.
some variations in those files that I was
see.
pre-processing and would like to remove this pre-processing and having the
I
kapp-controller
see.
use that as template. And I like the fact that I'm loading this as data files. Maybe I'm missing the star library. Yeah, I'm getting the files, that list, and return them into a map. So I like the fact that I don't have to get a function for each file, for each template, and like to keep this. But at the same time, getting some templating out of the static data files.
Right. Okay. No, that's a different thing. Now I'm better understanding. Yeah. So today there isn't a function. You're not missing some kind of function where we say, here's some templating. Evaluate this for me. What we would typically do is somehow provide that in a library itself and then evaluate that library. That's how we are exposing the templating, the overall templating experience. So it'd be interesting. Yeah, and you're talking about loading up those files. Yeah. I wonder if we could maybe spend a little more, like do a little bit of a pairing session to try and see what it would look like to maybe move this into a library and see if that could work. Because the output of a library is effectively all of the rendered templates when you say library.eval. So maybe that would
library,
be.
yeah.
Go ahead.
By library, you mean a star file?
No, I mean something that sits underneath the YTT_lib. Each one of these directories is considered the home for a library itself.
Okay.
So yeah, maybe kind of poking at that together in more long form format of a conversation. Be happy to get on a Zoom call with you and look into that.
That'd be awesome. Thank you very much.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let's sync up afterward and I'll try and find some time for us.
Great. Thank you. That's awesome. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, looks interesting.
All right, thank you for all of that. And thank you, John. So it looks like we're gonna have next steps. You'll connect later on. And hi, Scott.
Hello. I'm even wearing my Carvel swag today.
Look at that.
Exactly.
Yeah, good to see you. Happy New Year. And you made it just in time for me to sign off. Did you have anything you wanted to talk about, Scott?
No, I just completely missed the fact of the meeting happening and I was planning on joining, completely missed it. So see you in 2 weeks, I guess, for the next one. Remember?
This is Scott's way of getting brownie points for showing up without having to show up. I know you.
Oh, Nancy sent me a Slack message. I'm like, ooh, I knew I forgot something.
Yeah, I sent him a Slack. I was like, "Where's Scott? I haven't seen him in forever." And I was like, "He should be part of all this discussion happening. I know he would have some good insight." For those that are unaware, Scott is a longtime community member. He's been very involved for a while and contributes some great experience and insight. So he's been very helpful for the development of Carvel, and we appreciate him so much. So, but Scott, feel free to look at the video afterwards and maybe see what's going on. So, Guillermo, I'm hopefully he is given a lot of stuff to talk about today, and super appreciative of that. And then Thomas provided some insight as well, and we're going to be creating some issues there. So super fun stuff to start the new year. I really appreciate everybody's contributions here. It's good stuff.
Awesome. Well, can't wait for 2023. Okay.
Yeah. We're starting off with a bang. CNCF donations about to wrap up. We're going to be full sandbox project, and KubeCon Europe is happening in April, and it's exciting. Good stuff.
Awesome. And it'll be in Chicago this year, so I'll see everyone. Yay. Hopefully.
You're staying in Chicago?
I'm in Israel, but I'm from Chicago originally. So anytime there's a conference I care about that's there, I go to see family. So it's really easy. So yay.
Yeah.
America. And I don't say no to Amsterdam. So hopefully KubeCon Europe as well.
Yes. We'll see if I make it. I'm hoping I can, but we'll see. To at least to Amsterdam, I'm not sure, but Chicago, I will be.
Awesome. Well, can't wait.
Yeah. Okay, before we bid farewell, is there anything else folks want to bring up? Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining today. Thank you for all the discussions. As I mentioned, it's super appreciated. We love the engagement. It's super helpful, and it keeps us motivated to continue doing the work that we do. And for those of you watching from home, please come and join us live. We would love to hear from you and have you join us. Otherwise, you know where to find us. We're on all sorts of other channels, Slack, Twitter, GitHub, all the fun things. And with that, we look forward to seeing you at the fourth Wednesday of the month at 8 a.m. Pacific time. And have a great rest of your day. Bye.